As we move towards the 60th anniversary of our political independence, we can say with pride that we have made several positive changes. And we have even made positive changes in our institutions, especially our schools and other places of learning. Please remember to like this video on YouTube and to make your comments if you feel so moved to do. We look back with pride that the standard of living of all our people is definitely better than it was before political independence. And this is not a political statement. I have been saying this for years, no matter which political party is in power. Before political independence, barefooted people were in the majority. Who goes about barefooted now? No one wears tattered clothing in public anymore. Indeed, people under 40 years old today do not know that Jamaica. I will give you one example. Although Michael Manley came to power in 1972 and we had free education by 1973, and there were several attempts to change the institutions, not everything had reached everywhere as yet. And at the time in 1974, I was, before coming to St. Michael's Seminary as a student, I was an Social Development Commission youth officer in the St. Andrew Hills, in the Blue Mountains, which can be seen from St. Michael's Seminary. The Blue Mountains in particular was part of my work. And I had a motorcycle in those days and rode up to an area known as St. Peter's, where Clifton All-Age School past Content Gap is, because that was the site of one of the youth clubs. The principal himself oversaw the running of that youth club as I rode into the schoolyard. And yes, as I rode into the schoolyard, all the barefooted children left their classrooms and came out to look at the motorcycle, which they had never seen before. That alone tells you a whole different story and a whole different sort of Jamaica than the one we have today. But while there has been material progress, have we changed our attitudes? That is a question. Do we still have class prejudice? Do we still have a certain amount of racism in Jamaica? I say yes, there is. Do we still judge people by what they have instead of by who they are? Yes, we still do that. Too many people in Jamaica. Is there a certain amount of judging people, prejudice, on the basis of the color of their skin? Yes, that is so. Do we treat some people as if they are less than others because of the sort of job they do? Yes, that is also true. And this is happening 60 years after our political independence. Well, we don't really reach 60 until August, but in 60 years, 60 years of our independence. In the 1970s, there was a certain pride in being Jamaican, a certain pride in being Afro-Jamaican, a certain pride of whatever races that we were in Jamaica. And all of a sudden, certain terms that they used to use about the black skin ceased to exist and ceased to be heard. But that was because the powers that be were pushing a certain positive agenda to make the changes. I was in my 20s for most of the 1970s. And many of us were fooled into believing that certain derogatory statements, such as black and ugly, and such statements were a thing of the past. But then there was an election in 1980, and the government changed. And there was a new prime minister and a new set of ministers who might not have had that on their agenda, the whole business of Afro-Jamaicanness, the way it was in the 1970s. And all of a sudden, the old derogatory terms were back, such as black and ugly. That is because the institutions changed, but we did not change our attitudes. The Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, which was a government-owned station, was designed for local programming. As when Radio Jamaica was privately owned, there were more foreign programs in those days. We had only 2 stations. So the newscasters on JBC TV wore bush jackets, and they sported the Afro hairdo. But then as soon as the 1980s came, all of that was reversed. And also in the 1980s, there was a plan to put white Jamaicans into positions of power. And we got the feeling that when black people were put in positions of authority, it was because they could not find sufficient white people to put there. In other words, while in the 1970s there were attempts to change the institutions, attitudes had not changed. People simply abided by what they were expected to do. People simply abided by what they were expected to do. And say, but their attitude had not changed. And the same could be seen in the former Soviet Union, because after 75 years, we heard about ethnic cleansing, what happened during the years of the Marxism and so forth. And so I was forced to ask, whatever happened in the 75 years, that Russia was under a different type of system. Now, when P.J. Patterson was Prime Minister in the 1990s, he tried to have a program about values and attitudes, but it was shouted down. And Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, who incidentally his case is up for canonization in the Catholic Church, said socialism is an attitude of mind. And cooperatives, if we are to have them, is about the right attitudes. Winning in sports is about the right attitudes. We need to address our problem of attitudes. Have a good day.